Hello and welcome back to the show. So I'm really excited to share with you guys my guest for today, Nikki, who has been called the world's greatest podcast guest, right? So it's going to be a great episode for sure. But here's a little bit about Nikki if you guys didn't know. He has been called the modern day Napoleon Hill, and that is simply because he has interviewed now over 600 of the world's top thought leaders and entrepreneurs, including Barbara Corcoran, John Maxwell, and also Jack Canfield as well. He is the host of his own podcast, the number one podcast on thought leadership, The Thought Leader Revolution, and also a two-time New York Times bestselling author and one of the top leaders in the world today when it comes to mindset, podcast guesting, and also entrepreneurship. So, Nikki, man, I'm super excited to have you join us on the show to share a little bit about your journey and also what has led to your success and also what you've learned from all of these great individuals that you've had conversations with as well.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. It's an honor to be here. Um, I'll tell you a bit about my overall backstory and then my podcasting backstory because the two are different and equally interesting. So I'm actually originally an immigrant from the Middle East. I'm a Christian from Iran. When I was 11 years old, the Islamic Revolution took place in Iran. And the government of the Shah, which was a pro-Western government, was overthrown. And the government of the mullahs, which was very radical, anti-Western, came into being. During the revolution, there was pitched gun battles in the streets. So my mom and dad are looking around and going, this is not a place to raise a Christian family. So they made a plan to get us out of Iran and settle us in the West. It took a few years to actually fully execute that plan, but they got us out of Iran. We went to Greece, then to Canada, where I now live. And, you know, initially, like I'm a kid, right? I don't want to leave my home. I don't want to leave my buddies. You can understand that, right? And that was how I felt. But over time, I came to realize what an incredible sacrifice my mother and father had made because they left their entire lives and families behind to make a better life for us. And they also took us from a legacy of tyranny because that's what Iran had become. It was an autocratic, theocratic tyranny to a legacy of freedom. And you think about that. In the West, we are very lucky because freedom is basically the bedrock of Western societies, right? And I started to realize that every man, every woman on this planet wants to be free. They want to march to the tune of their own drummer, man. And so I started to realize what an incredible thing mom and dad had done for me. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to me, freedom's very important to you. Without freedom, you can't have free enterprise, right? Without free enterprise, you're not starting a company that you chose to start. You got to kiss the butt of the elites in power or you're screwed. And I think every entrepreneur needs to be at least appreciative of freedom, if not outright standing for freedom in what they do for work, in the politicians they support, and all of that good stuff. That's what I believe. And that really fed me. So in my business, I stand for entrepreneurs because I think entrepreneurs are freedom lovers, but I stand specifically for non-woke, freedom-loving entrepreneurs. That's what it's all about for me, helping these good men and women win, right? And my background is my mom and dad especially, he was an entrepreneur. And these were the best people. My mom's still alive, but my dad passed away 5 years ago. Best people on the planet. So my dad was the kind of guy that if you were, his friend, Kobe, and you were looking for work, he would call you up, say, come to my office, sit down. And he'd call all his buddies that are entrepreneurs or big people in companies or the government. And he'd say, yo, I got my friend Kobe here. He needs a job. This is what he can do. What do you got? And he'd like ethically manipulate them till one of them gave you a job. That's how you do it, right? And then if you were trying to start a business, you'd call him up and you go, hey, Mr. Billou, I need your help, right? And he'd go, yeah, come on, sit down. and he'd like listen to you, listen to your ideas, because he had an MBA, a very smart man, and he'd help you set up your business. He'd help you get access to capital, access to clients even. And if you're his friend, now let's say you're trying to buy a car or a house. Remember, Iran's a second world country at the time, right? The banking system isn't as sophisticated as here. The bank would only give you so much money. So you'd go over to him and you go, hey, I need a little bit more money to, buy my house, buy my car. He's go, how much do you need? And you tell him, and he'd write you a check, he'd give it to you. And then you'd go, okay, a year goes by, 2 years goes by, whatever, and you try to go pay him back. And he'd go, what are you doing? I said, I'm paying you back. He said, that wasn't a loan. He said, what are you talking about? That wasn't a loan. Of course that was a loan. He said, no, man, get out of here. That was a gift. He said, what do you mean? He said, listen, you want to do something? You go help the next guy that needs help, like you used to need help. That's what you do with that money, all right? And I'm going to tell you something, Kobe. Like, my dad's been dead almost 5 years to this day, because I have a very unusual name, Billou, right? It's not a name that a lot of people have. And so when there's some people, they go, Billou, your last name is Billou? I go, yes. They go, you're not related by chance to a Napoleon Billou. I go, yeah, that was my father. And then people would like they break down and cry, strangers in front of me. And they come and hug me, shake my hand, and they go, I need to tell you who your father was. And I've heard this story like a couple dozen times from people. So like growing up, I wanted to be like my dad. My dad always would tell me, life's about people, son, not money, people. Business even is about people, not money. Now, when I was a kid and he told me this, I'm going, what are you talking about, Dad? This is about money. He said, son, you need money to do business, but business is about people. All you do in business is you solve problems for people. That's how you make a profit. That's the purpose of business. And he said, every person needs somebody to believe in them, somebody to love them, somebody to see their greatness. That's your job. That man standing in front of you, man, he's somebody's hero. Someone's son, someone's brother, someone's father, someone's husband. And it's your job to make sure that if he comes to you, that you show him you're a good person, you believe in him, and you're going to help him win. And like, I have a business background. I come from a business family. I got my master's degree. I got my undergraduate in business. I have helped dozens of people make a lot of money. I've got a podcast. I've interviewed the top people in the world. I've written 11 books, 2 of them New York Times bestsellers. One of them was endorsed by President Trump. So my work has been endorsed by President Donald J. Trump on Truth Social. And all this is great. And I'm very proud of it all. But I'm most proud of one thing. I'm Napoleon Billou's son, and I believe in people.
Absolutely. So that's something I think you said earlier on as you were introducing your background, not a lot of entrepreneurs, especially kind of, people who came from not an immigrant background, right, understand, which is just how fragile our freedoms are every single day, and how grateful we should be that we have the opportunity to go out there and run and operate and own our own businesses, right? As real estate agents, that's pretty much what we all do. But even if you're outside of the industry, in a different industry, just the opportunity to go out there to, like you mentioned, get a loan to start a business, right? Maybe buy into a franchise, right? Publish your own book, even starting a podcast, right? Free media. This is all, it's something that we should be grateful for every day that we have and should really treat seriously. So, now talking a little bit more about your background starting podcasts, right? So you've obviously have such a great background when it comes to business. Your father was, somebody who truly understood the meaning of having your own business and entrepreneurship, right? Which is not about money necessarily, but it's about serving the people in and around you, creating belief, breathing belief and inspiration into others. Is that really what inspired you to go out there and start a podcast? Because I've heard of a lot of people who do that. And, what was that journey like, starting it, but also growing it to the point where, now you're recognized as pretty much the leading authority in the space?
I appreciate that. I started my own show because I just like the idea of learning from people and then sharing what I learned. Like, the way I learn best is I learn something and then I go and I teach it to other people. And podcasting is really an incredible way to do that. So I've interviewed guys and gals on my show, that were the best in their field. Like, for example, I interviewed Robert Cialdini, Dr. Robert Cialdini, right? He wrote Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, the most widely regarded book on persuasion in the world. And I brought him on my show because I was curious. I want to learn from this guy. And I did. I learned a ton from him. But man, when that show came out, like I got incredible feedback. Like people go, this was great. I learned a ton from it. Thank you. And that really was what it was all about, and still is what it is all about as far as I'm concerned. Uh, the the whole world of podcasting is incredible because you can reach people you'd otherwise never be able to reach. I mean, you see this, right? There's people that are going to listen and watch this episode that you would otherwise never meet ever. But because they saw it, maybe they'll like something I said, maybe they'll like something you said, maybe they'll think I'm crazy, but they like how much energy I bring to my talk, right? And they'll go, okay, well, this is cool. And that reason alone creates a connection with you. I had a guy become a coaching client of mine once, and he reached out to me, and I kind of knew him, but not really well. And he said, yeah, I need help, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, what made you decide to come work with me? He said, well, actually, I've been listening to your podcast for the last year. I feel like I know you. And that's really what it was. Like, think about that. That's pretty incredible, right? So for me, here's the deal. Um, if you're somebody who has a desire to be more successful and who also has a desire along the way to help people, and if you're in the real estate space, honestly, if you're any good, it can't just be all about your commission check. It's also got to be about helping families, get their first home or get their next home once they have kids. It's also got to be about maybe helping that couple that's going through a divorce take one less worry off their minds, helping that investor who's from out of town, who's got like a big dream of starting a multi-million-dollar portfolio, but right now maybe this is first or second or third property. Like you're a part of some crazy, serious, emotionally important moments in a human being's life. And I would hope that means something to you. I would hope that's important to you. That's a big reason why you do what you do, and not just that the checks are nice.
Yeah, absolutely. It shows up in the way that you as an agent will show up for your clients as well. How are you showing up to them? How much are you taking care of them? Are you treating this transaction as seriously as it could be for your clients as well? Because like you mentioned, these are not just, especially I think more seasoned agents in the industry who's been doing this for 5, 10, 20 years. It might just become a very repetitive thing for them to go through the process of a transaction. But for somebody who's a first time home buyer or somebody who is investing in their first property, right? For them, it's a completely different process. And you have to have kind of that emotional intelligence to be able to, and also the compassion to be able to match that and treat it just as seriously as they do as well. Is that something that you would agree with?
Yeah, buddy. And honestly, if you're a real estate agent, I don't think you should ever talk about transactions again. I think you should talk about relationships. Every deal you do is a relationship, not a transaction, because a transaction makes it sound impersonal. While a deal is part of a relationship, that sounds human. That sounds connected. It sounds beautiful, even.
Yep. Yeah, relationships over transactions, right? You have to kind of change the mindset of how you're approaching the people that you work with. And a lot of agents, they think that, one of the biggest things that drives their business is referrals. They will like people they've worked with in the past give them referrals, but they don't know, they always say like, why is nobody sending me referrals, right? It's probably because you haven't developed a strong enough relationship or haven't treated that person as a relationship more so as a transaction. And that's why they're not sending referrals your way because they're seeing from their side, they're seeing you as a transaction as well instead of a long-term relationship.
Yeah. So I've coached a lot of realtors. So there was a woman that I coached. She was part of a bigger team. And when I met her, she was very successful. She was doing about 200,000 a year in gross commissions. Okay. That's very good, right? But she wanted to do better. And when I coached her, she felt she needed to be very professional because she'd always been very professional. She came from a banking background. The number one thing we worked on was having her be herself because she was a very kind, caring human being. And she started to let that show in her business. And within 12 months, she went from 200,000 to 493,000 in gross commission just from doing that. That's a crazy jump if you think about it. That's a crazy jump. But it's a very real jump, right? And that kind of money can be made when, you help people and they can feel you're caring. Because nobody wants to be sold, man. You don't want to be sold. I don't want to be sold. Do you want to be sold? Hell no. Being sold sucks. But don't you love it when someone cares about you and helps you and serves you and advocates for you? So this woman, that's what we did for her. We took her from 200,000 to 493,000. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. The doubling of the business, right? When you're looking at it from that perspective. But I
More
mean,
than doubling. More
right,
than doubling.
right. So, but I'm sure you can talk more about just, I would say, like the emotional aspect of that as well, because there's so many agents who probably think the same way, where they think they have to show up a certain way, whether if it's being professional or, charismatic or whatever it is that they feel like a real estate agent should be, but they're deviating from who they are as a person. They're deviating from, maybe caring as an individual, and they have to show up and say the right things and, use the right phrases and communicate in a specific way. So just that impact, right? Would you say a lot of agents that you've coached in the past, they've made not just a jump in their business and seeing that growth and more than doubling it from making small changes like that, but also just from their lives in general? Are they living more fulfilled lives? Are they feeling better about what it is that you're doing?
Of course.
It's hard to measure, right? So,
When you're when you let yourself be a human being and talk to people, it feels good. Listen, I'm having a conversation with you. You're in one city, I'm in another. We're actually in different countries. You're in America, I'm in Canada, right? And I like you. I'm enjoying this. I'm like, wow, this is great. What would I rather be doing? Picking up my phone and scrolling Instagram or Facebook or TikTok? No, this is awesome. Now, is this going to necessarily turn into business for either one of us? I don't know. But that's not what's important. What this is turning into is a friendship, a business, a relationship. And that is the foundation of a good life. And it's also, frankly, the foundation of a good business.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to what you're talking about, like starting a podcast too, right? Because it's a way for you to get into so many conversations like this, where you're getting to meet other people that you wouldn't have been able to meet before, but also being able to learn from them and create new relationships that way as well. Because you never know, right? You know, a lot of people start podcasts to try to get an audience and generate leads and get business. But I think, I've been doing this for about 3 years or so now. The most rewarding thing for me is just I'm learning from so many people that come from different backgrounds, right? That are either in the industry or related to the industry. And I've created a lot of great friendships with people that I might have approached it in the beginning as, this is somebody I want to do business with, but then it turned into more of just a human relationship. So would you say that's one of the biggest reasons why people should be either guesting on podcasts or starting their own as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I got to tell you, my podcast guesting journey is a very interesting journey. So during the lockdowns and the scamdemic, right? I had in-person events business. And they told us we couldn't meet in person anymore. You understand that was like a blow to my business. And for a while, we found a way to like meet, even though they said you can't. But here's the truth of the matter. Eventually, we couldn't do it anymore, and we had to shut down. And I was in trouble. Like a lot of money walked out the door, $500,000, right? So I go to my coach and I go, Mark, what's going on, man? I'm like, buddy, I got to turn this around. He's like, okay, calm down. He says, give me a minute, let me think. And he's one of these guys, when he thinks, you got to shut up until he's finished, right? So he thinks, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm an impatient guy. And it's like, and he goes, okay, finally, I got it. I said, what is it? He said, why don't you go be a guest on other people's podcasts to get leads and sales and clients, not just to have a good conversation. I said, okay, great. I'm all for it. How do we do that? Buddy gave me the best piece of coaching I've ever received from any mentor in my life. I remember it verbatim, and I'll quote it to you verbatim. And he said, and I quote, I have no freaking idea, but we will figure it out together. So I started going on shows. And after every show, we did an after action report, a debrief. Didn't get any clients first show, second, third, no leads. 10, no leads. 20, 50, no leads. But still doing the after action debrief after every show, learning, growing. Go to 60, 70, 80, 100, no leads. But it all started to click after show 100. We figured it out. Show 101, got my first lead, my first sale, my first client. Part-time, 3 to 5 hours a week. I've gotten over $500,000 in business from podcast guesting. And if you're an agent and you're going, okay, well, why should I care? Do you like leads? Do you like sales? Do you like clients? Do you like listings? Do you like buyers? Do you like investors? If the answer is yes, then going on a podcast is exactly why. You can get more leads and sales and clients. Because, as you said, it's not about the audience. Audience is great. The real opportunity is to develop a relationship with the host. The host is a potential client. The host is a potential referral source. The host is a potential collaborator to get you on other stages. You and I, this conversation, it's inspiring to your audience. Your audience is going to listen. They're going to go, wow, this guy is great. He's got great energy. He's giving me some really good tips. I like it. It's good for you because you go, wow, I got a great guest. He's got great knowledge. I feel good. I'm glad I brought him on. But also, we're building a know, like, and trust factor, you and I. You do 100 guest appearances a year, 2 a week, for half an hour to an hour each. That's 100 new relationships you just built, my man. When I build 100 new business relationships, I'll make between 150,000 and 300,000 extra dollars from those new relationships. All the things I'm already doing, I'm still making money from. This is extra money, bolt-on money. And I wrote a book about this. It's called Get Booked and Get Paid: How to Generate 6 Figures Plus a Year Through Podcast Guesting. It's available on Amazon. And here's the deal. You might be listening to this and going, okay, well, Nicky, that's all nice, but you're one of these charismatic fellas. This only works for charismatic fellas, right? Wrong. So I run a workshop teaching people how to do this, right? Get Booked and Get Paid is a book, and it's a 2-day workshop on Zoom. So here's what happens. There's a fellow who took the workshop who's a chartered accountant, taxes. Not a charismatic fellow. Tax accountant. First show he went on, the host at the end of it said, "Wow, you're amazing. I think my clients need your help. Would it be okay if I send you some referrals?" Kobe, would it be okay if I send you some referrals? Would you be okay with that, Kobe? Is that all right?
I think most people will say yes.
You sure about that? I'm glad. Thanks, Kobe. He got 15 referrals. 5 of them became his clients. He made thousands and thousands of dollars from one appearance. Not a charismatic dude. You're going, okay, Nicky, all right. You don't have to be charismatic to do this. But you're one of these articulate dudes. You're a good speaker. You're one of these dudes. English is your first language. And, maybe I'm not from this country or my English isn't good. I'm not articulate. First of all, English is my second language. I'm from Iran originally, just to be clear. But secondly, there's a fella that I trained. His name is Mathieu. He's Belgian. English is not his first language. You go, okay, Nicky, it's not your first language, but you speak it pretty good. It's your second language. They go, English is not even his second language. It's not. Nope. Not even his third language. English is his fourth language. He speaks 4 languages. He speaks Dutch is his first language, French is his second language, German is his third language, and English is his fourth. He's got a Belgian accent that's noticeable, and he goes on English language shows. First show he went on, he made $4,000 as a result of the relationships he built. Within 84 days, he made $123,000. English is his fourth language. Now you're listening to this and you're going, okay, Nicky, you're taking all my excuses away, taking all my objections away. But that takes a lot of time, right? I got to have specialized equipment to be a podcast guest. I got to spend hours and hours every week, right? And you don't need specialized equipment. You can just have your computer. And you can do 2 shows a week that are half an hour. That's an hour a week. You do an hour a week? You do an hour a week. Shoot, Nicky, man, come on. You're taking all my objections away. I don't like this. What's going on here? All right. Well, don't you have to be like good at sales? You got to be good at sales at this, right? Yeah. Oh, you don't. Tell you another story. I brought a doctor on. Doctors don't sell. Selling is not something they're like keen on doing. Showed this doctor how to be honest and how to speak to people who with big problems. Now, she went on podcasts and it helped her get people to come to a live meeting. So it wasn't a podcast to a sale, okay? But it helped. The whole process helped her. A few things did, but the podcasting was a part of it, a big part of it. And she sells med spas, medical spas, where they do Botox injections and that sort of thing. She made $550,000 from that event that she put up. And 32 days later, sold another 500,000 to the same client, $1,050,000. So you don't have to have charisma. You don't have to be articulate with English. You have to be articulate enough, but you don't have to have English be your first language. You don't have to be good at sales. You just have to be honest and willing to tell the truth and have something that really helps people. Podcast guesting can do it for you, man. And here's the truth. Nobody's doing it like me. Nobody. Everybody goes on shows and they don't make any money. Okay, that's the truth because they don't know what they're doing. I know what I'm doing. I went on 100 shows. I figured it out. You do it my way, you'll make money. You do it everybody else's way, you won't make money. You do it the way you've always been doing it, you won't make money. That's the facts. That's the facts.
Yeah. So I think, people put so much pressure. I literally had a meeting this morning with somebody who was like that as well. They're so scared to just kind of get in front of the camera and, they didn't think they have anything to offer to other people. But, it's always kind of we're always in our own head so much more than in reality, right? Because, you're thinking about other people who they'll say like, well, I'm not articulate enough. But, if you've ever interviewed other people, you know that you probably give yourself less credit than what it takes to be a good podcast guest, right? You give yourself less credit than what you can do when it comes to being on, just having a conversation. You don't have to be super articulate. You just have to be able to have a normal conversation with somebody else. And it's never about selling. So, I mean, that, people who think that you have to go on podcasts and sell, it's never really about that. I've never had anybody come on my show, and I've never gone on any show and just started selling and pitching immediately. It's always just about giving value, answering questions candidly and honestly. And that's the best way. And as a host, I can tell you that's what we're looking for as far as the perfect guest as well. We don't need you to be
Absolutely.
a super refined speaker or, have, some great thing to sell. We just want you to have a conversation with us and then record it and give it out there to our audience, but also learn something from you as well. So,
You want to learn and you want to help people and you want to know that the person's sincere and they can help people. And if you're a guest, that's all you got to do. But you got to do it the right way. You do it the way most people do it, you're never going to make money. Never.
yeah, it took you guys 100 tries, right? And I think it's so cool that your mentor was so candid and honest with you, right? He just said, I don't know how to do this, but we'll figure it out. And I think a lot of agents can learn kind of from that story too, right? If you're newer or you don't know what to do, but you have a client who asks you for some advice, you just have to kind of be honest instead of trying to seem like somebody who's more knowledgeable than you actually are, being honest with them and saying, "Hey, we'll figure it out together." I think that's what most people are looking for in a
Yeah.
sense as well. It's not necessarily the old saying goes, right? Like people don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care,
Once you get.
right? So that's kind of the cliche, the old saying out there. But from a different perspective, I hope you can answer this question for us. But a lot of new agents come into the industry and they may be listening to this and may be thinking, "Wow, I mean, I think this is going to be a great strategy for me to get out there, be on podcasts as a guest. I don't have to start my own, and I don't have to." Kind of be beholden to this content schedule, right? This is much being a guest is much easier than being a host, right? But as a new agent, they have the problem of thinking, well, what kind of value can I give to my audience, right? I'm brand new to the industry. What are some things that I can share so that way I can actually be on shows and people want to interview me and I can be of value to the audience? What would you say to people who are maybe newer to an industry, especially new real estate agents, just kind of talking to who listens to this show?
You're going on a show. You need to be real and authentic. That's the number one thing everyone wants. Can't be full of crap. So if you're brand new to an industry, you can't position yourself as an industry veteran. And honestly, I would not go on shows saying, "Hey, I'm a real estate agent. I want to tell you all about real estate," because that's not very interesting to a lot of hosts per se, unless they're a host with a real estate show. However, if you're a real estate agent, well, I don't know, let's say you've been an outdoorsman all your life and you hunt and you fish, it'd be a lot better for you to go on a show with outdoorsmen and hunting and fishing people because that expertise is going to get people to be interested. And if you build a relationship with that host, you and that host could have a conversation about what you do once the episode's over, right? Right? You could set up a call, you could go meet them. That's the whole point. And if the audience likes you, you can offer to have a call with anybody. Anybody. Like I've gone on some shows, really big shows, right? And one of the things I've offered when I went on the show is I said, look, I'll have a call with anybody. Here's my link. First show I went on, I had 47 people reach out to me and book calls. 47. About 13 of them became clients. That was good. It was excellent from my point of view. From a single show, right? If you're new, You got to learn how to do this. It's not about, should I go and talk about real estate? No, it's more nuanced than that. But go buy my book, read it, and utilize the strategies there. And if that's not enough and you want more help, then get on my calendar and maybe come to my workshop. And we'll set you up. When people come to our workshop, by the time they leave, they're like booked on their first few shows and they have a game plan for how to turn that into leads, sales, and clients.
Absolutely. I love that you mentioned that, it's not necessarily you have to be an expert in real estate, right? Especially if you're newer. Just find topics and find hosts that, you can offer some type of value to, right? If you're an outdoorsman, there's a lot of, people who are kind of like amateur athletes, right? That if you run like marathons or do a lot of endurance sports, there's plenty of shows out there, communities where they love to interview people who are doing the same thing. Maybe you came from a different industry, right? You can talk something about that as well. So there's so many different ways you can approach that. I think agents are always thinking about, how do I make this conversation about real estate? How do I insert real estate into this relationship that I have? And that, I mean, obviously it's going to come back to that, but it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to put so much
You'll
pressure.
start there. You'll start there. Not on a podcast per se, because if you're going on a podcast to try to sell someone, they're going to feel that and they're not going to want to have you on. But if you go on a podcast to give value and find out what people are dealing with, that's when your opportunity becomes real.
Yep, absolutely. It's all about, kind of going back to what we were talking about in the beginning of the show, being authentic, offering value, and creating relationships, right? One to one, but also one to many when you are
Yes.
a guest on a podcast. So, Nikki, man, I appreciate you being on the show today and sharing your value with us and having this conversation. I really learned a ton from you, and I hope the listeners did as well. So, for people out there that want to buy your book, want to attend your workshop, and learn more about what it's like to make money actually being on podcast as a guest, right? How great is that? What are some of the best ways for people to reach out to you and to actually find your book and find more information about how they can attend your workshops and the things that you do?
The book is on Amazon. So just go to Amazon.com and type in Nicky Billou. I'm the only Nicky Billou. And, get booked and get paid. It's the name of the book. And it'll show up super quick. So here's what it looks like. Boom. Um, if you want to just sign up for the workshop, go to eCircleacademy.com/get booked. eCircleacademy.com/get booked. It's a landing page. Tell you when the next date is, and you can sign up right there. If you want to have a conversation, you're stuck with something, you want to ask some questions, then just jump on my calendar. I offer a free coaching call, get to know me call, whatever you want to call it. The official name is a success call. Go to eCircleacademy.com/appointment. So those are the 3 touch points.
Awesome. We'll make sure to leave those links in the description, the show notes down below so people can find you. But if you guys are struggling with things, you guys want to talk, you guys felt that Nikki has inspired you today, I, encourage you to book a call with him, right? Have a conversation with him, get his book, and just see where that conversation and that relationship could lead to, right? Which is kind of what we centered around our topic for today. But Nikki, man, appreciate you being on the show. Before
Thank
we
you.
let you go, is there any last pieces of advice or tips you would like to leave with the audience here today?
Um, yeah, I love you. You're my brother, you're my sister from another mother. My sister from another mister, my brother from another mother. We're all in this together. And don't go through life alone. Don't let yourself get isolated. Don't let the chattering monkeys in your head talk you out of your greatness. You know, and if you honestly, if you're like not feeling good, and if just this modern life has you not talking to people and you're in your head a lot, book a call with me and just say, hey man, I just need someone to remind me who I really am. I'm happy to do that.
Absolutely, man. That's some great advice, and thank you for sharing that, Nikki. Appreciate you being here today.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you for tuning in, and we will see you on the next show. Take care.